So I'm going to open the meeting. It's 11:07. So we have a fairly short agenda. I should probably do roll call, but I see everybody here today. So I'm just going to quickly note that Tim Williams is here. Greg Guimon. Nancy. Andrew. And Amy. Okay, great. Short agenda. I just have 4 items. First two. The second one, I actually didn't even bring the hazard mitigation updates because we just did that yesterday. So we essentially have done the hazard mitigation annual assessment by going to update it yesterday with the department heads. So really we're just reviewing the PPI for its year-end assessment. So I'll call your attention to the PPI document that I handed out. So really, we only have to address 2 sections of the document. The first being outreach checklist, which I actually already did when I sent this out. So if you see anything in the it's on page 9. If you see anything that you want to add or change on the outreach checklist, let me know. But I pretty much went through and updated that. So I'll give you guys a second to review quickly.
This year, I'm gonna try to secure some grant funding, I think, to get those like flood warning signs.
Oh, the signs. I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
And the Esplanade area to when we have a flooding event, EOC can activate them so that the lights will turn on above them and it'll say, flood area ahead or road flooded ahead or something. So,
Yeah.
So it's just another step that we'll take to prevent or stop people from driving through or
Cool.
going into these areas.
Cool. That's great because I know we talked about that for
Yeah.
some time. That would be really great.
Just a minor thing on page 4, change Jeremy's thing to Leader Bank
Oh, thank you.
instead of
Oh,
Fairway.
thank you. That's a great one. Okay. Jeremy. Okay, great. Okay, cool. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to desired outcomes checklist and explanation. So this is really where we spend most of our time. So we're going to go through each one of these. The one thing I didn't send out to you that I have a copy of, I have 2 copies, are the updated flood insurance information numbers. Gene Cole sent that to me last night, so I do have these. I can pass them around. I only have 2 copies, so I'm going to read off of them, but I'll have...
Say maybe you just make the statement for since we're being...
Oh, the statement that I have a copy of these?
Well, no, what the numbers...
Oh, what the numbers are? Sure, yeah, when I go through them. So we'll get to that in about 5 or 6 activities. So an increase in flood map inquiries, I was able to check that because Andrew sends those through a digital form we have. We went from 13 in 2019, 131 in 2020 during the Lomar, 8 last year, and 2 this year. So we really have not achieved getting more of those, but I imagine 2 can only go up from there. So I bet you next year we'll get more than 2. Increase in flood insurance policies. Oh, it's right here. Okay, so in 2020, in the SFHA. So if I look at this, let me just find where those numbers are. Here they are. Okay. This is premium in force.
Joe, would it be like, does those requests have to come from the person, or could it be something like anytime a development activity or permit's applied for, we just enter a jot form request?
You could do that because technically they have to, they're inquiring about the project. So you would basically submit one for every permit pulled in a high-risk zone.
Yep.
Yeah, because we both look at each address, at least for
Yeah.
zoning.
We have to
We
look
for
at
more.
every permit address to to see if it's in a flood zone. We're looking at the GIS. We might as well do the jot form and get that, right?
Yep, so let me make that, so in the very last section is changes and additions, so I'm gonna make that a change. That every time a permit is pulled in the SFHA, to send in a map request. I think that's a,
That'll
And-
boost those numbers quite significantly.
yeah, that's a really great idea.
That'll turn it to hundreds.
And that's probably a more realistic representation too, because those people are getting that information
They
from
are.
your
It's
office.
just not, they're not going to that, like, they're not.
See,
entering
Specifically
that.
asking for
Because
that, yeah.
The purpose of specifically asking that was to get the letter to give to their insurance company.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
Now it's more, they don't need that letter anymore, but we still need to show FEMA that people are getting the information about what flood zone they're in.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's,
Joe, also, one other quick thing, we're probably gonna have another Lomar this
oh,
fall
really?
because of the seawall addition
could do
down
that
in
on the
Brant
new
Rock.
So is that something that's actually, because I saw that, but is FEMA suggesting that that needs to be done? Because I don't think the seawall, would it would it have an impact? Because they
Yeah.
don't count that as like a coastal structure.
They required Woods Hole Group to redo the maps, and there are several changes to the maps
Oh, okay.
in the Brant Rock area. And it was
Okay.
based on the seawall
Probably
repair.
the elevation of the ground or whatever's going on there. Yeah. Okay. So there's a possible new Lomar. You said this fall. Okay. So that'll change things too, because people will be asking for map updates then.
Right.
Okay. So just going back to our numbers on policies in the SFHA, and I'm trying to
I
get.
got it as 701
Okay.
because you've got.
Oh, you're looking
370
at the
You got
yeah.
378 in the BC and X. It's standard, and then another 48 at the preferred.
Oh yeah, which is just
And then if you
taking
back
that.
out
Yeah.
of the total of 11,727, we're coming up with 701.
Okay. So there's 701.
You know,
So this
I
is-
don't know if on this goal we're meeting it because we're saying on the left that it's just increased flood policies purchased in the SFHA, but in the back we're counting the NFIP flood policies. I think more people are buying private.
So that brings up a great question.
We
Yeah.
can't get an accurate number on
Yeah.
it because we don't know.
And I believe,
More and more people are doing private.
yeah, and I think, Greg, in the survey we sent out for the hazard mitigation plan, we asked where people are getting their flood insurance from. And the last time I asked Leslie for an update on that, she or maybe you had mentioned that the number of people that checked off private was much higher than NFIP.
Must be Leslie. 'cause
Yeah,
I
okay.
haven't seen that yet.
Okay, so it must have been, I think it was Leslie that mentioned that in one of our
According to
calls.
this, it's 100 less than we had in 2021.
Right.
801 to 701.
Yeah, but it must be, but I know for a fact people are obviously buying private flood
That's what I'm thinking,
insurance.
Yeah, it's just how do we quantify it?
So do we made a suggestion that in 2000 and, let me go to the back here. I think it was our 2020 update. Let me look. In 2020, we said attempt to complete a town-wide insurance survey to understand who has flood insurance, is it NFIP or private, and other questions that are to be determined. This would also go to local insurance agencies in order to try to understand our total number of flood policies. Do we want to make a more concerted effort next year to ask specifically our local insurance agencies how many private versus how many NFIP policies they have? Does that seem... I mean, it's not going to quantify it total, but if we have a local agent saying, I got 100 NFIP and 300 private, it certainly skews the number, and maybe that survey is what we track our private placement each year. It seemed like a good idea. I don't know how else to do it. I mean, we're not going to go door to door.
No, until the state gets you numbers that you can.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. And the state, I don't think right now is tracking that, at least not at the
They
level
need
we
to.
can, they need to.
Right, and get it to
They're
the
not
town, it's
tracking
just a
that.
general number without being,
Right.
Yeah,
invading privacy or anything. But
yeah. Okay, so let's focus on agent survey in 2023. Okay. So that number, as you mentioned, is down to 701. An increase in information requests on flood insurance and flood mitigation. Now, what I did is I kept last year's comment here. I think, Andrew, you may have filled this out last year. I don't remember this
Which one is
question.
this now,
This
sir?
is the third one, the third activity. Under desired outcomes, it's the third one down.
Yep.
So I don't, it says increased presence at town meetings, elections, events is resulting in greater interest in information requests. Know your flood zone, know your risk signage, which is, yeah, what you had added.
Yep. I've also, so I have added the flood zone to the building department website, where I've literally flooded it with tons of information related to construction, development, permitting in a flood zone. And insurance and buying and selling and all that other
Well,
stuff too.
yeah, and you know what? One thing that we don't have here is that you have a flood insurance flyer that goes out with every permit that's pulled,
Yep.
correct?
Yep. Every floodplain permit and every building permit. Actually, we added it to every electrical, HVAC, every single permit that's issued by the building department for anything in a flood zone gets issued that.
Great.
And you guys were at the multi-hazard mitigation plan update meeting.
Correct.
Public hearing.
Yeah.
And you're
And we
gonna
were-
attend
yeah.
the next one as well, so you're,
We were sending out, with every building permit, we were sending out a link to that survey too.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool. That's probably why we got, well, in Greg's efforts, probably got, what, we have, almost had 300, right?
That's cool.
yep.
An increase in mitigation activities. So I'm going to kind of rely on you, Andrew, to see, like, mitigation would be anything you've seen, and you might just have to pull your permit list to see, like, what mitigation's been done. You know, I think that's what you may have done in years past.
I don't really know. I mean, more than what we identified on the HMP, plan, like for mitigation activities.
Well,
or-
you know, I'm not sure what we're really referring to there. I think in years past, what we've put there is, you know, activities from a individual that's mitigated their home in some way, because we can quantify that with building permits. But I'm not sure
Yeah, I
whether
mean, we've had several houses that have just
Elevated.
elevated. Like that's the only thing that they've done.
Got a couple that have.
Well,
vented.
that's a pretty big thing.
Oh yeah,
So-
exactly. But it wasn't like they raised and rebuilt or did an addition. They like literally just elevated. Some houses did do additions and elevate. Some raise and rebuilds. We've been
So Joe gives, if you get a number from Andrew, that shows progress in that.
Yeah, and also I think I like what I think you were saying, Greg, on the number of mitigation activities completed on the hazard mitigation plan. We should track how many get completed, because we do mark them off as they get completed.
Are we trying to go more simple, like raising electrical and all that too, or no?
Is that like,
Difficult.
mitigation. Would that also be like the demolition of the Pratt Farm building? Like
Yeah.
that was a removal of a
Yeah,
structure from
yeah.
the flood zone. That's mitigating.
Yep.
Hazard.
yeah, sure is.
So the other thing we're doing now, like in the past, people would pull like one building permit and it would be like raise and rebuild raise existing single family, rebuild new single family, one building permit. We're like, no, you need two building permits. You got two structures you're dealing
Yeah.
with. You got an existing structure you're demolishing and you're building a new structure. So it needs two permits. Plus, it allows us easier tracking of structures that are removed from the flood zone and structures that are constructed in a flood zone. So we're able to give those more accurate numbers to FEMA for that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So we changed that aspect of things.
That's a really good point.
Everybody's thrilled that we're crying more permits, but, you know,
But they are.
Yeah, I'm sure they love it.
we try to make it as easy as possible.
But don't they really need to do their building permit with the demo permit anyway? You can't go and demo something and then go to get the building permit later. You'd be crazy to do that.
Yeah, exactly, and, you know.
Okay, so the next one is a replica of the first one because it's essentially the same thing, the increase in flood map and how to prevent flood damage inquiries, so very similar. Increase in flood insurance policies across the whole community. Okay, so this number is actually decreased from 1,488 to 1,289 last year to 1,127. Now, again, this is not a true representation because we have private flood insurance policies, and we just don't know how to quantify that right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, both of us can speak. I would say what, 75% of what we're doing is
Yeah,
private versus
Private.
NFIP.
yeah.
So it shows you where the migration is right now.
Yeah, right.
The X zones have gone down as well, but there's actually surprising numbers since they're not required. So we had 589 in 2020, 488 in 21, and 426. So that decrease has not been as significant as you would expect. So I think that's, while we haven't achieved an increase, we certainly haven't seen the drop off maybe in some other places. Reduce emergency rescues. I don't think there's been any rescues this year. Hopefully there's none tomorrow or Friday. Keep that number down. Number of residents that evacuate. I don't think there's been any storms to track that. Have there been any storms big enough to evacuate people?
this year.
So, no.
Thankfully.
Yeah. Protect residents before events occur. Again, there's no events that have occurred, so I'm going to leave that as...
But we are putting out
Oh, signs are
signs
going
for
out.
this
Yeah.
storm.
Signs going
And I
out.
think we're starting to use the code red thing, right? Because that all came out last night, you
Yep.
know, the phone, you know.
Oh, do we have an internal code red now, or
Oh, well,
From the town.
yeah, yeah, it's like we have the.
I know the sheriff
internal-
has one.
Well, we have the internal system that
System.
was going last night to warn, you know, that basically all town employees got a phone call last night, and we had to click into the system to say, you know, this will be the way that we get notified of, you know, closures or other hazards in town, you know.
And people can sign up for that.
Yeah. So there is, like, we're definitely making a better effort in town to not only notify our employees about, like, hazards, but also, like, the townspeople as well.
Okay, cool. That's good. Those are good. Increase in flood recovery post-event. Right now, there hasn't really been any events to recover from. So hopefully, again, Friday is not one of them. Reduce flood insurance losses. I have this is last year's note, new seawall from Middle to South Street, new drainage areas, new drainage design for Surf Ave, drainage fixed at Yogi's Plymouth Ave area. But this year, there's updates to the seawall, correct? There's a new, as of yesterday, Tom Reynolds was saying there's a 650-foot stretch.
Well, I think it's covered by the Middle to South
That would be-
Street.
That's the new wall.
That's the new wall.
Got it, okay.
We also certified repairs on Bay Ave area.
Okay, repairs at Bay Ave.
And what about further down on Plymouth Ave by the water building? I know that DPW has done a lot of work there, and they still have to do more work.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what their plan is. I gotta have a meeting with Tom and explain to them that they gotta start going through me in the flood zone and just can't start digging and putting drainage stuff everywhere.
Would that be included where, new drainage design for Surf Ave, and I know they have to do something on Plymouth Ave as well,
Yes.
but not at Yogi's Plymouth Ave.
Yeah, that was, I kind of brought that up yesterday.
Yeah.
And Tom was mentioning some big money project that we're gonna have to do, but it's still in the planning phases, so.
Okay.
What, like Willow Street Bridge, is that Whereas, I don't know where the bridges are. The other bridge. we
That's
did in
still underway,
Green
yeah, no, they haven't finished it yet, but it's.
Oh, and they're working on the dike, to fix the dike, they're getting
see
a grant to fix, to.
Oh,
to
okay,
do
so that's gonna be
improvements on
underway
Yep.
soon? Okay, cool.
Well, they're applying for the grant. Whether or not we get it, we don't know yet.
Yeah. Speed the recovery and return to flood damaged properties, so, no events to track as of right now. Reduce damage to structures. Again, I usually just copy what we used before, so I'll put that down there. Increase the number of homes compliant with the NFIP building permit requirements. So this is what we put last year. I don't know, Andrew, if you want me to, if you have, like, we can use the same permit numbers that we were gonna pull for the other activity, you know, the new, buildings that have come into compliance.
Yep, we can, I mean, you could drop something in about the floodplain permit there of increased documentation and, approval and review by a CFM.
Okay. Floodplain. Permit. And reviewed by CFM. Okay. Reduce non-compliant floodplain work. We have the floodplain permit down
Oh,
here.
yeah, okay.
This is what we put last year. We can keep it there if that looks good.
You could just say increased enforcement. That's definitely stepped up recently.
Yep.
Yup. Reduce erosion of river and creek banks. And again, this is what we put last year. I think this is more of a conservation question, because I think Bill updated us with this last year.
I was just wondering, weren't we supposed to have a conservation person?
Yeah, Joe Ring was unable to make it today, so I sent him this for his comments for at some point, if he can get them to us, if he has any comments. But I would think this might be something. Who's the new conservation commissioner? Mike?
Seal.
Like, so-
Okay. Do we want to, at some point between now and the next couple of weeks, maybe run this question by him?
I think so.
Okay. Prevent dune erosion. The town is in the process of a beach dune nourishment project. Almost all easements have been secured, but Greg, you had an update that they have been all secured in the Green Harbor area.
Harbor area, Bay Ave, yep. We're expecting by April, we should be finished with the permitting.
Okay.
The hope is that we get on the fall town meeting for match for potential grant from CZM.
Put something in there about increasing the Barrier Beach area, coastal dune boundaries.
What? About what?
The Conservation Commission has been asking people beyond the Barrier Beach boundaries to do soil surveys to prove that they're not a coastal dune.
Okay.
So there's been a little bit of kind of, you want to say prevent dune erosion, you could say that we've been more restrictive on construction, requiring soil surveys and stuff like that, for sandy soil
And coastal
areas.
dune areas, yeah.
Coastal dune areas that might not necessarily have been previously delineated.
Okay. That's good.
And Fieldston's not compliant on the easements, correct?
Yeah. So they have dropped out of the permitting for now.
So we're just focused on the Green Harbor area.
No, Wrexham Beach, Winslow Ave, the Rocky
Yeah.
Yep.
Beach, and Bay Ave. So we have 3 areas that we're working on.
Okay, cool. Improve wetland vegetation growth, and then that would be the same thing, so that's gonna be a Concom question. Prevent damage to natural environment. There are several elements ongoing within the town, and I have these 3: ongoing study for the dike repair. I think that's still ongoing, right?
Yep.
DPW barn has been relocated, and then roughly 15 private wetland restorations, but I would refer to Concom to see if they have, or
Done that yet,
done that.
They've got a big stormwater drainage project that they're doing at the airport. Stormwater, to like increase the ability of the natural functions of that area to drain.
In that creek back there, the one that's always been a problem. Reduce localized flooding due to storm drain clogs, new drainage designs. So this was used from the other, I think I copied this from the other one that we did. I don't know, and maybe we could put the stormwater project down there.
DPW is also going to be working with Concom to clean out a lot of the drainage basins that have become overgrown in the Wrexham Fieldstone area.
Clear out drainage basin. Okay, cool. Collect townwide information on damage in order to maximize FEMA post-disaster funding for storm damage. And then I have here what we put last year is before any storms each year, the police fly a drone over the coast to survey it pre-damage. I'm pretty sure they still do that,
Yep.
right? Okay. Prevent deterioration of coastal infrastructure, and then I have the new seawall, so we copy this from the other one as well. Reduce damage by debris to coastal structures, and then I put the floodplain permits because it's talking about how, I think that's all still relevant in there. Okay. Okay. This pen is leaking or something. So that concludes our activity updates. We just have to go to our change and additions to the PPI. So basically, this is where we make suggestions to how we want to implement things next year, and we review if we've done any of these activities or suggested changes. So in 2020, depending on COVID-19, the committee wants a stronger focus on digital outreaches. Well, that's really not relevant anymore because we're back to in-person. Attempt to complete a townwide insurance survey that has been moved to our down to 2022. Pre-storm documentation campaign for homeowners to take photos of their properties before a storm. Do we want to continue to push that, or is that something that we feel we can integrate into our outreach material?
You can put it in our outreach material.
Doesn't hurt to
Get it out
also
there.
get it out there,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
keep saying it.
I think it was.
On the social media page?
Yeah, we could definitely do something on social media. I like the idea of possibly putting together like a week sometime in the fall when the leaves are coming down to really push for documentation, cleaning out your drainage basins, kind of putting
In front of your house.
in front of your house. Exactly, yeah, exactly. We don't need anyone going down
While
into
you're
the
there,
drainage
take it.
basins. Yeah. But I think maybe.
Sandbags, that kind of like addressing those types
Yes,
of
I
issues.
think what we should do next year is put together, have a week, like a CRS week in town, where we really put together really a big push town-wide through all the different departments on all the key messages we want people to do or prepare for, especially since fall is prepare for storm, clean your drainage basin, sandbags, all that type of stuff. So I think we should maybe maybe the selectmen can declare a CRS week here in town where there is a real big push for these messages.
Isn't like the beginning of October usually like flood awareness week or something
It's
like
it's
that?
supposed to be, and I think DCR has started doing a hazard mitigation week too around the end of September to align with preparedness month in September. So it might not hurt for us to put a focus on that in September.
Yeah, I think as long as we do our documentation so people know what it's for, I think like,
Yeah.
people forget, like, the Army Corps of Engineers uses pictures from residents to figure out what they want to do and grants and things like that, So
And even
the
if we
more
have
we
like
have, the better for those types of programs too,
a tip of the day and put it on social media.
Yeah. Messaging. Okay, cool. Quantify our pre-post firm structures as outlined in the MVP plan in order to understand where our vulnerable structures are and quantify our outreach projects. Greg, you mentioned the MVP plan is pretty much complete now. Did that plan, I think you were working on a plan like that. Did something like that ever get done
They went
as part
around.
of the MVP plan?
You guys looked at every single house, right? And
Yeah.
to verify
Well,
heights.
all the Wrexham, Fieldston,
Pretty much the.
Brant Rock, up down to Brant Rock, Esplanade was the area that was in the study area. And we did estimated elevations of the structures and stuff.
And is that in a plan, or was
Yeah,
that just,
it's
it
in
is?
The MVP
Oh,
plan
okay.
for that area that had been completed 4 months ago? Just a little while ago. was
Is that
completed.
is that plan like public? Is it
Yeah, it's
finalized?
on the planning site. planning-
Okay, so
planning
we should
department site.
put that on the CRS site.
Yep.
And that can be, for now, that can be almost checked off as something that we've accomplished, at least for part of the town. Utilize our new building permit system to track our outcomes, and that is something we are doing, so we'll check that off. Flood hazard sign, plan for Esplanade flooding to prevent people from driving. You just gave an update, Andrew, that you're looking for grants next year to put signage like that in. The flashing signs and stuff. So grants are ongoing. Okay, 2021 suggested changes. Implement a reverse 911 plan and utilize sirens from nuclear plant to provide an advanced warning system for floods. Question on
Don't
this.
think that grant got filed.
Okay, for the plan.
Right, from the MVP, it was a recommendation as well on
Okay.
that plan. And I don't think the Emergency Management Center got that grant out.
Was the town still considering funding our warning and response plan from a CRS perspective, do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm going to convert that recommendation to a warning and response plan as outlined in CRS manual. Okay. Perform one of the outreaches to include information about beach nourishment plan. I believe you did an outreach, right, Greg? Go down. Was that
Yep.
this year that we did? I can't remember. The years are.
It was this summer.
It was this summer, right? Okay. Yeah.
And there'll be another one within probably two months.
Okay. Cool. Add in paper radio to clear storm drains. That is going to move down to our CRS week. I think that's-
We have it on MCM on TV.
Well, that was exactly, and that was actually my next one, a short PPI Did You Know to play on local access. We did that. We did several PSAs, so that was a really good one we did this year.
Well, and just ask to make sure they're run again next year.
They
Yep.
run all the time, yeah.
Yeah. Run PSAs again.
I'm going to be having, are we on to 2022 now?
The last one is create and revise our brochure and send out the brochure mailing 2 times a year. Well, we did half of that. We revised the brochure. We sent it out 1 time. I'm wondering, there is a flood insurance brochure that goes out with a permitting system. I'm wondering if we look to send that out once a year as well. But I think we should send out 2 mailings possibly. We'll put that as a recommendation. Okay, yes, now we're on to 2022 suggestions.
I am going to be having Joy Duperalt.
Mm-hmm.
She has offered to do a substantial improvement, substantial damage workshop in February or March. It's like a 3-hour presentation with Q&A, where we would invite residents, contractors,
Residents,
design
okay.
professionals.
So it's like a public meeting.
Big public meeting, big thing, you know.
Is
Clear
Eric
the
gonna be
air
there as
about
well?
Substantial improvement, substantial
I'd
damage.
imagine.
I would think, yeah. for the construction
Yeah,
site.
Eric and all those people would be there too. Eric Carlson.
Yeah, probably. I'm not sure if he would, but Joy runs the whole thing,
Yeah.
so she would
Okay.
definitely be there. But
Okay.
Cool.
yeah, so she's got a whole program that she's trying to push and shop out to a ton of people and get it out there. So I'm gonna have her come and do that.
That's awesome. So that's definitely on the suggested changes to include that as an outreach activity.
Yeah, yep. And then one thing that Dave and I were thinking of doing were we've been tossing around the idea of actually doing a couple of like instructional videos, maybe using Jim Folkard's company, a couple of those guys to like show like some of the things that you have to do with how to install certain hardware, you know, that kind of stuff, you know, and give like an couple instructional videos of like, you know, these are the steps you got to take, you know, for doing this type of wind bracing or, you know, other stuff.
So basically, building department instructional videos.
Yeah, kind of. Yep.
Cool. Anyone else have any suggested changes to the PPI for next year?
That's, of course, if we are able to find the time to film ourselves putting tool belts back on again. And
There you
doing
go.
Stuff, so, yeah.
That'd be great.
I'd just say that with Joe Ring coming on from Concom, we can kind of integrate some of the conservation and building to make them a little bit more
Yeah.
workable.
Yeah.
Instead of conflicting, I should say.
Yeah. Hey, Mike.
You know?
Hey.
Thought I would step in to see how everything was going.
Sure.
Awesome.
So integrate more.
We would just say we're bringing in Concom to kind of make sure we're all on the same
Yeah.
page.
Yeah, so
Basically
integrate
what it
more
is.
Concom items. That's, I think, a great point, because a lot of the stuff we end up touching on has updates from them as well, so.
And then
Right.
one of the biggest pushes in floodplain management right now is the natural functions, you know, and the
Yeah.
open space and all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, we can build all these structures, we can elevate everything else, but if you're not protecting those natural sponges out there of the wetlands, then, you know, that's a big thing that kind of gets overlooked a lot of times because it's not insurable property, right?
Yeah.
So I think but they're trying to really, you know, with all the climate change studies and everything else, they're really pushing that, and I think that's something that we could, you know, benefit from integrating into the CRS stuff would be
Yeah.
that kind of, you know, like if there might be points to be gotten too
Yeah.
that we're missing on, you know.
Yeah.
Already.
The other change too, something that we need to actually, it's a requirement for us to integrate, is the points we're putting together for you to do site visits.
Yeah.
That needs to be integrated into the PPI. That's in order for us to get those points, or the multiplied points. So the site visits need to be integrated. And flood insurance information.
This is the one thing that like I don't know very well and don't really have a lot of, you know, it's usually when people ask us about that, I give them you two, you know,
Yeah.
like the two of you, your information, you know.
So we did an experiment on Cape Cod where the MCC has flood insurance information center. And because having an outside organization partner with the town gives us bonus points for the PPI. So Shannon on the Cape, Shannon Holst, came to me and said, would the MCC be able to do this for Chatham to see if that will qualify for the flood insurance information points? And it did, and they got 40 extra points just for advertising that service. And then she recently came to me and they wanted proof that we were doing it, and we were able to download the Excel document with all the inquiries and the responses. So I'm assuming that integrating that into Marshfield will get us those points too. So I'm gonna make that. What I'm gonna need is an email from the town requesting that service as proof that we're doing it, and we'll get those 40 points. So I'm going to mark that as something to do.
So letter from the selectmen, it's to the select board.
The Chatham was able to use an email, but a letter would work too, because the CRS needs proof that there's an agreement between the community and the nonprofit that's being used.
We can do that.
Cool. That'll get us that. So that's almost 100 extra points right there. So
Did we ever, when I asked
Win
you
for
about the
here we
bid-
come.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's who got the class 6.
Did we ever find out those benchmarks and elevation?
No, actually, that's a great point. I didn't look into that yet, but benchmark maintenance are points. Do we
Yeah,
maintain
CRS, so I didn't know if
benchmarks?
like your elevation, surveyors and engineers I know they know where they are,
Yeah.
but if they're in the database in the
Well,
CRS
and they use
manual.
them and they list them on the site plans too,
Right,
and on
so-
the elevation certificates, they'll reference the benchmarks too, that if they use one that's in a local area to determine the elevation.
So
mark.
it's something we could probably put into 2022 is just the benchmark maintenance, just
Sure.
so that we know where these benchmarks are and, they're available in the
great.
database. And I think
I'll have to see.
That's
Yeah,
easy.
that's
I think
that
we can
should.
pick that up.
Yeah.
We'll-
That should be easy.
That's wicked easy.
Yeah, that should be easy. Benchmark maintenance, and I'll get the points number for that. Figure out
I
how
think
many
it's in like
points that's
section
worth.
449 or something. Right
Yeah,
around
it's
there.
in the 400 section for sure. Any other suggested changes? I think these are the most changes we've ever made. Cool. All right, so that completes the update, the PPI update, which means that there's no other business on that, and we do have to take 2 votes to send this to the selectmen, to the select board for adoption and review, both the PPI assessment and the hazard mitigation annual assessment, which, as noted, was completed yesterday.
Joe, I make a motion to send the PPI assessment to the select board.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
Joe, I make a motion to send the HMA annual assessment to the select board.
Okay, second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Wonderful. Okay. I don't have anything else, and I don't want to take up any more time because we have a lot of activities. We're going to have to start the year. Actually, future meetings is the next item. What I really want to do is start. Greg has up here 2 maps. These are the open space maps and the land use maps. And I believe this is kind of the beginning of the open space recalculation, correct, for us and for the naturally functions open space, or just open space?
Just open space.
Just open
We're
space.
not, the function requires certification of land areas by vegetation and animal habitat, et cetera, which we can't do.
Okay.
The land use side is part of the hazardous mitigation, so this is brand-new land use information on the town that we've
Okay.
completed for the Woods Hole Group is working with us, so we've supplied that information. The open space map, there have been two major changes are coming along, but they have not happened yet, which is the 101 acres for Red Gull Farm that's going to become town land, which is probably 90 of those acres are in the floodplain, which will be permanent protected open space, so we get credit for that. Last town meeting, Michael, we voted to purchase the 33 acres on the South River near Wrexham Beach.
Yes.
When those 2 get actually transferred over, the paperwork and the assessors run it as now town of Marshfield land, we will update that map, and then you'll have a new updated open space map. There are a couple of VRT parcels as well that have not been transferred yet. We've been waiting for quite a while for those to be transferred. but those are outside of the floodplain, so they wouldn't help us with the
Okay,
calculations.
yeah, you're right, yeah.
That, the red gold subdivision is interesting, right, because, it's a subdivision, so it's a development activity, right? It's in the flood zone, but none of the houses proposed are in the flood zone, right?
Oh.
None of the structures, right? The only thing that's gonna be in a flood zone is like the road, and, that's about it. There's one little section of the
Unnumbered A
road.
zones over there with the
What's
bog?
that?
Are they unnumbered A zones, like where the bog is?
Actually, the road is outside of the flood zone.
Is it really?
Yeah, it has a vernal pool and stuff and a small little pocket of wetlands that it's close to, but the road and houses are all outside of the flood zone.
Cool.
That, the parcel is, so that was a floodplain permit, right? So. Because
Okay.
it had a flood zone in it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but again, that's another thing that like, we can show that we're reviewing all development activity, not just the building permits, but also,
Stuff going on,
subdivisions,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
like, and through that process, we were able to get, Concom was involved, planning was involved, now we've protected open space for the town and ensured that there weren't any, adverse effects to the floodplain, from that development, so,
Cool.
pretty cool. Yeah.
That is cool.
You're getting probably about 120 additional acres of town-owned
That's
protected
awesome.
open space in the flood zone.
Well, and we'll need that because if my math is right, which it usually isn't, but if my math is right, we were given some extra open space by CRS calculation the last time, which helped us. But this time, with the change in the flood map through the Lomar, we're going to definitely have a reduction by about 100 points in our open space calculations, which means any extra land we can grab is going to be critically important to maintain our points or try to get those points back. So when I say we get an extra 100 points from Andrew's work and the flood insurance service and that type of stuff, we're just getting ourselves back to where we were.
There are 3 to 4 unknown owner parcels in the marsh on the south side of town, right on the Duxbury town line, that maybe if the town were to move for tax purposes, that would also help.
Yeah, no, that would help too, because those are definitely in the high-risk zone. I mean,
Yep.
if they're marsh. So I guess all of this comes down to our next meeting because we're going to have to spend a substantial amount of time. We are going for our 5-year recert, believe it or not, in May of '24, which gives us a year and a few months to get all of our plans and points and all of this stuff together. When we did this the first time, we were recerted in November of 19 and we started in January of 18. So, and it took us that long to get our points.
Back to the open space, do we need
Yes.
those letters on the 5-year research?
Yes, we will need, that's a great point. We're gonna need to go back and get the letters from the owners of the parcels that are not town-owned and from the letter from the town certifying those areas will not be developed for at least the next 5 years. And we spent a substantial amount of time doing that the last time, so we should start planning to get those over this coming summer. We should get those.
That's like that whole process started like a month after I started as the building inspector. So I remember what Jim was going through with that whole deal.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it was a little like I was just trying to learn the ropes, and I was like,
That
oh
was
my
your
God,
introduction,
what are we doing?
yeah.
But
Yeah.
Joe, did-
I'll talk to Jim too and see if he's got any stuff like where his files were for that specifically
Okay.
and stuff like that. If there's anything I don't know about.
And I should have the previous contact information for at least most of them.
Yeah, and that was part of it, was just
Yeah.
finding out who I could get in touch with at that time. So we have
Did
all
we
that.
send the
and-
letter from the select board, or was it from the PPI committee?
No, the letter was from the select board.
Okay, again,
So that's something we'll need over the summer. Yeah. We'll work up, I think the list probably hasn't changed a ton of
no,
town
it shouldn't,
owns.
it shouldn't have changed that much.
Yeah.
No, we don't sell any property, so.
So it's
If
only,
anything, we only take in property.
yeah.
Well, this is Audubon and Wildlands Trust, et cetera, as well.
So we'll have, yeah, so that's probably all stayed the same, I would guess.
There might be a purchase or two by Audubon,
Right.
but
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know how much of it is in the floodplain. I think it's kind of up in the hills area.
Okay. So we'll need to reach out to those. So yeah, so next summer is going to be really busy getting our research stuff done because I do not want to go into 24 scrambling to get things done that take months to get done. So next year is going to be a combination of doing our 2023 stuff and getting ready for our 2024 research, especially if we want to go for a Class 6. You know, we needed 300 points when we concluded our 2019 research. But because of changes with maps and points and stuff, we really probably needed an additional 400 to have a cushion. Gene said that something has changed with the 4 credits somewhere in the 400 series, though, where we might be able to get extra points for doing something he says fairly simple. So I'll pull that out.
I don't know.
Yeah, fairly simple in CRS terms could be something totally different. And so our next meeting, I want to make sure we schedule a minimum of an hour, and it may go over, to review all of that. So I'm looking at January. I'm looking at the second week, the week of the 9th. I'm wondering if we could meet on that Wednesday, the 11th,
Fine with me.
Me too.
Good.
at 11 a.m. Okay, we'll put that in. I'm also going to have to get on to the select board's agenda for that month to present these to them.
So we have a meeting the 9th, and we have a meeting the 23rd.
You know, let's do the 20. I'll email you. Let's do the 23rd. That because there's probably going to be a lot of moving parts to get this ready in our meeting and everything. So I'll email you to get on for the 23rd. Okay. And with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
I got stuff to do.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks,
All
Joe.
right. Hey, not a problem.